In the history of how nations die, there is usually the sound of cannon fire, but in the 19th century, the Ottoman Empire was dismantled not by soldiers but by accountants, conquered not with gunpowder, but with compound interest. This is the story of the first true debt trap. It demonstrates a brutal truth. You do not need to invade a country to own it. You simply need to hold its mortgage. In the mid-19th century, the Ottoman Empire appeared a titan, stretching from the Balkans to the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. The Sultan in Istanbul commanded the crossroads of the world, but beneath this imperial majesty, the foundation was rotting. The empire was economically sick, its economy frozen in a medieval past, while Europe industrialized. The Sultan's treasuries were chronically short of cash, thanks to a corrupt and inefficient tax system. For centuries, the Ottomans solved cash flow problems by debasing their currency or confiscating wealth, but these medieval tricks no longer worked. The empire needed capital to modernize. Despite a deep cultural aversion to usury, the Sultan's resistance to borrowing from the West was about to end. The Russian Empire invaded Ottoman territory, sparking the Crimean War. Britain and France stepped in to help, sending armies and bankers. The war was costing the Ottoman treasury millions it did not have. To save the empire, Sultan Abdulmajid took a loan. In 1854, the Ottomans signed their first foreign loan. It was presented as a lifeline, but the terms were predatory. The issue price was set at 80, meaning for every $100 of debt the Sultan signed for, he only received $80 in cash, while paying interest on the full amount. The Sultan had discovered a magic trick. A simple signature in London could summon fleets of gold to his doorstep. The war ended, but the borrowing did not. The Ottoman elite had tasted the forbidden fruit of easy credit and became addicted, wanting Istanbul to look like the shining capitals of London and Paris. But they didn't spend the borrowed money on factories or education, they spent it on prestige. The ultimate symbol of this imperial vanity, the Dolmabahce Palace. Sultan Abdulmajid wanted a palace to rival Versailles, abandoning the 400-year-old home of his ancestors. Filled with tons of gold leaf and the world's largest crystal chandelier, it was a breathtaking building. But it was also a tombstone, built entirely with borrowed money while the peasants of Anatolia starved. To pay for the palace, the Sultan borrowed again and again. European bankers were happy to lend, making a fortune on commissions and high interest. They knew the empire was struggling, but assumed Britain and France would never let it fail. This is moral hazard, taking huge risks, believing you'll be bailed out. By the 1860s, it was a classic Ponzi scheme. The empire took out new loans just to pay the interest on old ones. Debt payments consumed the budget, rising from 15% of state income in 1860 to over 50% by 1870. With no money left for the army, schools, or infrastructure, the state was being hollowed out. To keep the system going, the government turned to the Galata bankers, local financiers who acted as loan sharks. When the treasury ran dry, the Grand Vizier would borrow at short-term rates of 18% or higher. It was financial suicide. This debt funded vanity projects like Sultan Abdulaziz's massive navy. He ordered ironclad warships the empire couldn't afford to fuel. The ships sat in the Golden Horn rusting, floating piles of debt. The tipping point arrived in 1873. A global financial panic caused capital to dry up. At the exact same time, a catastrophic drought struck the heartland of Anatolia. The crops failed and the sheep died. The peasants, who were the tax base of the empire, faced starvation. With its revenue stream collapsed, the treasury was empty. A massive payment was due to European bondholders, but there was no cash. The empire faced a choice: starve its own people, or stop paying. In October 1875, the Ottoman government issued the Decree of Ramadan, cutting its debt payments in half. In the brutal language of finance, it was a default. The reaction in Europe was furious. Millions of investors in Britain and France saw their savings wiped out overnight, and diplomatic support for the Ottomans evaporated. The Sultan's financial weakness invited aggression. In 1877, Russia declared war. The war was a disaster for the Ottomans, who were forced to sign a humiliating peace treaty, ceding vast territories. But the most devastating clause was financial. Russia imposed a massive war indemnity. Already in default to European bankers, the empire now owed a massive war debt to the Russian Tsar. The total debt load was far greater than the entire Ottoman economy. The empire was insolvent, defenseless, and had lost its credit, territory, and dignity. Sultan Abdul Hamid II knew he was the ruler of a corpse, but European powers had a smarter idea than territorial conquest. They wanted to conquer the Ottoman Empire financially. In 1881, representatives of European bondholders, bankers, not generals, arrived in Istanbul. They dictated terms not for land but for the empire's cash flow. This led to the Decree of Muharrem, which established the Ottoman Public Debt Administration, or OPDA, a state within a state, seizing Ottoman revenues to repay foreign bondholders. This was the mechanism of the soft conquest. The OPDA was not a government agency, but a corporation run by European banks. The Sultan's decree handed over the empire's most valuable revenues directly to this foreign entity. The OPDA built its own bureaucracy, hiring over 5,000 tax collectors who answered not to the Sultan, but to a board of directors. They fanned out across the empire, collecting taxes on everything from salt and silk to fish and tobacco. If a farmer harvested silk, the profit went to a banker in Paris. If a peasant bought salt, the tax went to Berlin. It was a state within a state. The OPDA was incredibly efficient, run with modern European accounting standards. It grew the economy, but for the benefit of creditors, not citizens. Between 1881 and 1914, the OPDA collected roughly 1/3 of the total revenue of the Ottoman Empire. This meant 1 out of every 3 coins was siphoned abroad. The Ottoman government was left with scraps, trapped in a cycle of underdevelopment, unable to invest in its own future. The Sultan became a puppet. The debt trap didn't just extract money, it extracted sovereignty, allowing European powers to manipulate Ottoman policy. While Britain and France squeezed the Ottomans for cash, Germany saw a strategic opportunity, positioning itself not as a parasite, but as a friend who wanted to build the empire up. The Germans proposed the Berlin-Baghdad Railway, a dream of steel connecting Europe to the Middle East, bypassing the British-controlled Suez Canal. For the Sultan, it was a lifeline, but the Ottoman treasury was empty. Germany, through Deutsche Bank, offered to finance it. But the terms were predatory. The contracts included kilometric guarantees, forcing the Ottomans to pay a guaranteed profit for every mile of track. Crucially, Germany also gained the rights to all oil and minerals found near the tracks. The Sultan had swapped the golden handcuffs of the British for the steel chains of the Germans. By 1910, the Ottoman Empire was effectively a German economic colony, alarming Britain and France. Trapped by their old debts and the OPDA, the Ottoman leadership saw the outbreak of World War I as a chance to break free. They made a fatal calculation, joining Germany. They believed a German victory would allow them to cancel their debts to Britain and France, abolish the OPDA, and finally regain their financial independence. When war came, the Ottomans seized the OPDA, expelling its foreign directors. For a brief moment they felt free, but the gamble failed. The war was a catastrophe. The empire was destroyed, but the debt survived. When the Turkish Republic was founded in 1923, European powers returned with their ledgers. At the Treaty of Lausanne, they demanded the new nation pay the debts of the dead empire. Ataturk agreed, knowing Turkey couldn't start as a defaulter. The new republic spent its first 30 years paying for the Sultan's reckless spending, making the final payment in 1954. The story of the Ottoman debt trap is the ultimate lesson in financial dependency. The British and French proved that the most effective way to destroy an empire is not to attack it, but to lend it money it can never repay. The sick man of Europe wasn't defeated, he was foreclosed upon. The lesson is written in red ink. Sovereignty isn't just about flags and borders, it's about solvency. If you do not own your debt owns you. I'm John. Subscribe to Cinematic History Tales to see what's coming next.